Okay, appreciate that, Arthur. Thank you so much. Now, if you have with the help of Tzvi, we tried to send out a text. I don't know if you happen to have the text of the Ramban. So we're on page Tesvav on the left column. And the Ramban is now asking the following question. Is it true, as we've tried to prove in the last study that we had, that Taryag Mitzvos, that secret number, is absolutely universally accepted by all the Tanoim and the Amoraim and the Midrashim? If we would stop at the point that we stopped last week, then that seems to be the conclusion. We had so many Gemaras and so many Sugyas that assumed the magic number 613. We had Gemaras in Masechta Shabbos, we had Gemaras in Masechta Nedarim, in Shavuos, in Yevamis. We spoke about Naomi, who was trying to dissuade Rus because scaring her away that there are 613 mitzvahs if you accept the Geras to be a Jewess. And we spoke about the Luchos, that Moshe broke the Luchos that contained 613 mitzvahs in them, and so forth and so on.
So you say the point is there's no counter position. It's 613 or nothing. I mean, it's...
Well, now we're about to approach the counter position. So again, if you're on the same page as me, and you're on the left column of page Tesvav, you count down 7 lines. So now we're going to learn a medrash, one of those rare midrashim. And the medrash is going to present a dispute between Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, first generation Amora, and the Rabbanan. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi is going to tell us what we're familiar with. No great news. Shnei dibros shamu Yisrael mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu anochi v'lo yeh. And out of the 10 of the Aseret Dibros, 2 of them we heard directly from Hashem. Hado d'chsiv, and he quotes a pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Yishakeni mini shikos piu. Now, the word nishikos has a mem as a prefix. Whenever there's a prefix of a mem, it means not all but some, right? And that's minashikos, velo kol nishikos. So there were 10 nishikos, representing the 10 commandments, and yishakeni means something that comes from the lips, which in this case means the sound of God's voice coming through kaviyachal, the lips of God, was only 2 out of the 10. So 8 out of the 10 we did not hear minishikos, but 2 out of the 10 we got nishikos. Now, if we accept Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi and we connect him with the Gemara that we're studying at the end of Makis, the word Torah symbolizes 611, right? That's Torah. And then Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, those are the 611 commandments we heard from Moshe. And 2, we heard Mipi Gvura directly from God's Piu, Nishikos Piu. And if we add 2 to 611, we come up with 613. So that would be Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi here in the Medrash Chazis, in line and representative of what we saw at the end of Gemara Makis in the name Rav Simlon. However, the Medrash continues. For Rabbanan Amri, the rabbis, and usually when we see the word Rabbanan, we mean the majority opinion, Kol adibros shamu Yisrael mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We heard not 2, but 10 dibros, straight from God's mouth. And now the Medrash goes on and continues to prove the Shita of the Rabbanan. And for this, we need a Chumash. Just give me a minute to get a Chumash here. 1 second. Yeah, see, right here, you get a Chumash, Parshas Yisro, Chumash Shmos, Parshas Yisro. All right, if you get a chance, you'll open it up, see if you can find the following. It's not critical that we see it inside, but the Medrash records that Rabbi Yeshua the Sichnin b'Shem Rab Levi, Taimon de Rabbanon. Why did the Rabbanon insist on an opposite position, namely that all Aseres HaDivros were heard directly from Hashem? Because Achar Kol HaDivros,
Which parak?
yeah, that's Chof, you got it. Here, take a look. Vayomer El Moshe. Okay, so this is Pasuk Tezayin. The Aseres HaDivros ends in Pasuk Yudalid, V'chol Asher L'Reacha, and then it says in Pasuk Tezvav, a description of what's going on, that Klal Yisrael see the Kolos, the Lapidim, and so forth and so on. Vayomer El Moshe, Daber Ata Imanu V'nishma'a. At this point, after the Aseres HaDivros, they approach Moshe Rabbeinu and they say, Moshe, please, you speak to us. V'al yidaber imanu elokim pen namus. We've had enough. You know, if God continues to speak to us, then we're going to fall apart. We'll just dissolve, you know, so to speak. But as it comes out, at what point did they come to Moshe Rabbeinu to say, you know what? We can't take it anymore. You speak to us. It's after the Aseres HaDibros. And that, says the Medrash, will support the Shita of the Chachamim that we heard all Aseres HaDibros straight from the mouth of Hashem, which basically undermines the entire proof for the number 613. Because if you're going to add 10 to 611, then you end up with 621, a new number, which, by the way, could be very helpful when we get to the Shita of the Bahag, who adds 7 mitzvahs to Rabbanan. Okay, we're still not up to 621, but we're getting close. And the Gemara says, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Polig. What about Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi? He says we only heard 2 of the 10 dibros. Ein mukta mucha b'Torah. Really, this pasuk belongs after Anochi v'lo yim. Oh, Eino midaber b'davar imanu v'nishma eli achar shnayim u'shlosha adibros. The Medrash, even in Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, raises the possibility that maybe we heard 3 of the dibros from Hashem. Rabbi Azariah, oh, I like that name. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Simon, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Tafis Shitase. What is a support for the Shita of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi? Tafis Shitase means we could support his view. Amar, and he said the following: Ksiv Torah Tzivaladu Moshe, Kol HaTorah Kula Sheish Me'osu Shlosh Esrei Mitzvahs, Torah Avi B'Gematria Ola Kaminyan Tarya 611 mitzvahs, Daber Moshe Imanu Be'Ram Be'Anochi V'Lo Yelecha Lo Shamanu Mipi Moshe Lo Mipi Agvura V'Omer Yishakenu V'Shikos Piu, etc., etc. And this is the Shita Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Now, if you ask yourself the question, where is the majority rule over here? It's with the Rabbanan against Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. And honestly, if I can make the following comment, the Ramban here has an axe to grind. You could put me in Cherem for saying that, because the Ramban is absolutely opposed. Absolutely, there's nothing he tolerates less than ein mukdam u'mu'ucher b'Torah. That is toxic, poisonous words that he can't tolerate. And anytime Rashi in his Pirush ala Torah will activate ein mukdam u'mu'ucher Torah, don't even bother looking. I'm going to tell you the Ramban is going to argue. You don't even have to check me out on that. So that now, when it says that the people of Israel approach Moshe Rabbeinu, please, you speak to us. We've had it. And that pasuk appears at the end of the Aseret Dibros. That's a very strong proof that we heard all the Aseret Dibros directly from the mouth of Hashem, which, by the way, calms me down a lot, because I'd like to believe that all Aseret Dibros are on the same level. There's not one that's less important than the other, and there's not one or two that are more important than the others. And, the Rambam always emphasizes that our belief in Moshe Rabbeinu is not based on all the osos and mofsim that we're going to learn about in this week's parsha, which I'm going to discuss a little bit later on today, but rather they're based on the fact that we heard the Aseret Dibros directly mipi Gvura. That's the basis for our belief in Moshe Rabbeinu. Other Nevi'im, I don't know. You have to really figure it out. But certainly our belief in Moshe Rabbeinu is from Har Sinai, that we heard the voice of Hashem directly. So it would really calm me down personally if I were convinced that we heard all Aseret Dibros from mipi Gvura. And this medrash, which the Ramban is quoting at great length, would seem to indicate that the entire thesis of 613 is maintained not by majority, but by minority. Bruce?
I was going to say that in many systems, maybe in all systems, that lists rules given by, the Rosh Hashiva, the CEO, the boss, one could make a hierarchy of rules which are central. They should all be kept, but these are the most important. And we see in Judaism that there are punishments that are different, that one tries to figure out also, which might be more significant, which, let's say, apply all the time, as opposed to only part of the time. I guess there's a fear factor that if we say there's a hierarchy, people will drop off the others, as opposed to there really is a hierarchy. So I'm wondering if you have a thought on that, why there isn't the logical idea of a hierarchy, which we see on the punishment side, indicating as such.
There's no question that there's a hierarchy. I mean, for example, Yehard Val Yavar only applies to 3. And a Chiyav Misa applies to X, and Kresus 39, and whatever. There's definitely a hierarchy, but I'm not sure. Could you just clue me in as to why? Why that's on your mind now?
Well, because you mentioned the 613 is all equivalent.
No, Chas v'sholom. Not the 613 are all equivalent. What I said was all Aseret Dibros were equivalent. Aseret Dibros is an entity. We can spend hours here discussing what is unique about the Aseret Dibros. That Chazal tell us that we entered into the bris with HaKadosh Baruch Hu when we accepted the Aseret Dibros. Aseret Dibros is not just a joke. It's not just in order. I thought they would have it up here on the. But anyway, it's not just in order to decorate a synagogue that we have Aseret Dibros. There's a very great significance to Aseret Dibros. I would like to assume that whatever significance there is to the Aseret Dibros, it's shared by all Aseret Dibros. But as soon as you tell me that they only got 2 mipi Gvura, and then we sort of downgrade the other 8 to mipi Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm not so happy about that. But that's the way I was brought up, honestly. As a child, I was always taught that we only heard 2 out of the 10 straight from Hashem, and Anochi and Lo Yeh, and this is the basis for our belief, and monotheism, blah, 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 blah. And that's how I was brought up. I don't know how you were brought up. Is there anyone here in the audience today, in the Zoom audience? Just raise your hand if again, there are only 2 people that I see by face. But anyway, raise your hand if you were brought up to believe that we heard all Aseret Dibros from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mouth. Oh, everybody left me. Oh, okay.
But even those 10, Rabbi, we don't, many shuls, you don't stand, you don't put up the lukot on because God
Oh, that's
forbid,
something else, Bruce.
people will say that
That's
the most important.
because every letter of the Torah has a kedusha, and we don't want people to walk out and think, well, you know what? All I need is the Aseres HaDibros. But I just want to read the next line in the Ramban just to summarize what we've been discussing today. Vehine midrasho shel Rav Hamnuna shemana Torah tziva lanu Moshe Torah b'gematria, that Rav Hamnuna, who was commenting on Rav Simloi at the end of Makis, that the word Torah is going to teach us the number 611, and then we had the 2, hence we have 613. Heim Bekan, here we're turning to page Tezayin, Divrei Yachid. Do you know what the word Yachid means? Right, we have a principle called Yachid v'Rabim Alocha Kerabim. We don't paskin like a Yachid. We paskin like the Rabbim. For Rabbanan Cholkim Olav. And the Rabbanan didn't accept it. The whole basis is on that calculation of 611 plus 2. Well, it just doesn't work out according to the majority opinion.
Yeah, but isn't the 611 plus 2, you're counting the 2 twice because they're part of the Torah.
No, Arthur, it says Torah tziva lanu Moshe. The word Torah in this particular pasuk is not referring to the entire Torah. It's referring to the mitzvahs that were given by Moshe. Torah tziva lanu Moshe. How many mitzvahs were given by Moshe? 611. And 2 mipi agvura. But that's against the Rabbanan in this Medrash Chazis. Maybe the Ramban is sort of backtracking. Maybe the Rabbanon in this Medrash only argued against Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi about how many of the Dibros we heard directly Mipi Hashem, but they didn't reject the concept of 613. Klomar al midrasho shel Rav Simloi atzmo, right? The Gemara in Makkas has 2 statements, one after the other. The first statement is Rav Simloi. Rav Simloi says that we were commanded in 613 mitzvahs. And then we have the statement of Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna says, how did he know such a thing? Meaning, how did he derive the conclusion of 613? And the answer is because Torah from Moshe is 611 and 2 mipi agvura. Could be, he says, that the Rabbanon in this Medrash are not rejecting the entire system of 613. They're not rejecting the Medrash of Rav Simloi, who says that they're Taryag mitzvos. Maybe they're only rejecting that derivation, which was suggested, let's say, in the next generation by Rav Hamnuna. Hey, I'll find you a basis for 613 in the calculation of 611 plus 2. That's where they put their foot down, and they say that calculation is not true. But the fundamental principle that was formulated by Rav Simloi, that there are 613 mitzvahs, which we've seen over and over again throughout Shas, even the Rabbanan accepted that. But again, you have to admit that this is the Ramban's backsliding. This is his position in order to somehow take the sting away from the problem that the Rabbanan seem to have rejected Taryag. And therefore he goes on to say that the basic principle of Taryag, which was formulated by Rav Simloi, even the Rabbanan accepted. And then the question is, where did they come up with the number 613? Because they rejected the calculation of 611 and 6 and plus 2. And he says, perhaps hu misores biyadam, they had a tradition, not based on the gematria of Torah plus 2, They had a tradition that was passed through the generations that there are 613 mitzvahs. V'akol modim shekachu schum ha-mitzvahs. At this point, the Ramban is changing his entire approach. Look at those words, hakol modim. I can't overemphasize those words because the Ramban is now backtracking about everything he said until now. And he kept saying over and over again that you see that the Chachamim are arguing whether this is a reshus, this is a mitzvah, and if it's not a mitzvah, then you have to add another mitzvah, and if it's not a lav in the Torah, you have to find another lav, and if you add a lav, you have to subtract a lav. And maybe all those Chacham rejected the notion of Taryag. But now, the Ramban is saying, in the light of all those sugyas that we quoted last week, where one sugya after the other, not coincidentally, always quote the number 613, Hakol modim shekachu haschum. What is it based on? You have two choices. Either you could say it's based on Torah 611 plus 2, mipi hagvura, or it was a Mesorah b'yadam. It was something that was passed through the generations. Again, this is the Ramban's own creation. We have no proof anywhere, other than this Ramban that we're reading now, to the effect that there was a Mesorah on the number 613. We don't know such a thing. Shegam shom b'medrash chazis is kiru aschum hazeh pa'omim ramos. He says, if you take a look in Medrash Chazis, in many, many different places, the Medrash mentions the number 613. How could that be so if it's against the Rabbanan? Because they say we heard all 10 Mamoros, all 10 Dibros from Hashem. Now, let me just ask you one question here. When you say there's a Mesores, how far back does that Mesores go? Look at the next line in the Ramban. And again, I would ask you to underline the word cheshbon. Cheshbon means that final calculation of 613. His pashtus. It was accepted widely, as we saw last week, all the different sugyas. Ubechol makom nemar. And it's said over and over again, Nomar, you know what we're going to say? Shu masur biyadam mipi Moshe Rabbeinu b'Sinai. The Hersta Maisa, my friends, do you hear what's going on here? The Ramban is saying that when Moshe Rabbeinu stood at our Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights, Hashem told him that there are 613 mitzvahs. This is not a Mesorah, says the Ramban, that started at some point during the entire history of the development of halacha. This was not a Mesorah that started with Rabbeinu HaKadosh when he wrote the Mishnah. This is a Mesorah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself to Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai. But what about all the debates in Shas about whether this is a mitzvah, whether it's a reshus, whether it's a lav and not? V'im kol zeh, einom nimnoi mimachlokoseim b'mitzvah min ha-mitzvahs, shezeh yom ha-reshus v'zeh yom ha-chova. No one's inhibited in any debate about any particular mitzvah to decide whether my position, my view is that it's a mitzvah or it's only a reshus. Ki yodea ha'omer reshus. He knows. Do you hear this? He knows. Sheyesh mitzvah memalos ha'cheshbon. Again, the word cheshbon. Now, Bosai, if I read this Ramban carefully, correctly, I should say, and it's up to you to judge, the Ramban is saying something absolutely wild. You asked me a question, let's say, Li'olam B'hem Tavodo. I'm just giving one of the examples that Ramban had quoted. And I have a debate whether it's reshus or mitzvah. Am I going to be inhibited one way or the other by how my decision, my view, my ruling is going to impact on 613? The answer is no. I'm not impacted. It's not on my radar screen. Ki yodea, he knows. Ha'omer rishus, sheyesh mitzvah memales hacheshbon. There is some mitzvah out there that I'm going to substitute in order to arrive and guarantee the Masorah from Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu of 613. Do I know where that mitzvah is? Do I know how I'm going to find that mitzvah? It's like Bedikas Chametz. I remember after 40 years of doing Bedik, I finally found a piece of chametz. I started dancing, literally dancing. I was so happy. It justified 40 years of Bedikas chametz. Imagine a Tana comes along and he says, this is a rishus. Well, wait a minute. Shouldn't he be inhibited? You're going to tell me this is a rishus? How are you going to get 613? You've just subtracted a mitzvah from Taryan. Yodea, says the Ramban, sheyesh mitzvah. He knows that somewhere out there there's another mitzvah, shemamalis hacheshbon. And the Gemara is not even going to ask, where is that other mitzvah? It's somewhere out there in halachic cyberspace.
So basically, because the Gemara doesn't specify how we decide what's a mitzvah min haTorah, we're stuck with everyone coming up with different things.
Again, I'm not sure what you mean, Arthur. What I'm saying is in every single pasuk and every single mandate in the Torah, we're going to have to decide if that's a mitzvah or it's not a mitzvah. If we make a decision that it's not a mitzvah, there's got to be another mitzvah to make up for it in order to arrive at 613. Am I going to be inhibited?
No, but what I'm saying is something different. What I'm saying, because we don't know what a mitzvah, the definition of a mitzvah min haTorah is, we don't have a definition. It's something that hints at it, or so because we don't have a definition, 613, the magical number 613 can't be the correct number.
Arthur, I don't know what you're saying. Listen carefully, Arthur. You see this book here?
Yeah.
It's called the Sefer HaMitzvahs. I don't know if you could see the title.
Yeah, I see it.
This whole book is, its goal is to answer one question, and one question only. What is a mitzvah?
But you're forced to say things a mitzvah.
If you want to claim we don't know what a mitzvah is, then you
No, what I'm saying is we don't necessarily know what a mitzvah is min haTorah. In other words, we don't know. We don't have a list of. And no, when you hold up that book, is that book only Deraisa?
Only Doraisa. This entire book is about what is a mitzvah Doraisa. This entire book. If you tell me we don't know what is a mitzvah Doraisa, then take this book and throw it into the rubbish.
Well, if it leaves anything out, then throw it on the trash heap.
Then how could that be different counts? If that's the book, that's all the Oraisa, how can it be different counts? What's the Oraisa?
Because not everyone agrees. There's no definition of a mitzvah min haTorah. That's the problem.
Please, Arthur, not that there's no definition of a mitzvah. There are many definitions of a mitzvah. There's the Rambam's definition of a mitzvah. There's the Bahag's definition of a mitzvah.
Right.
There's
so because
the Ramban's definition of a mitzvah. Every single Rishon is going to have his own definition of a mitzvah. That's what we're learning now. This is the excitement of the project that we're engaging in. Let's set our goals. Our goal is to define what is a mitzvah. The Rambam is going to come up with his definition, and each Rishon is going to come up with his definition. And now the Ramban is saying that every single one of those Rishonim and those Tanoim and those Amoraim that date back all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu, they all agree that there are 613 mitzvahs. Now, define a mitzvah. And once you define a mitzvah, now we can go through the Torah and see if we can come up with the number 613. This is going to be an amazing trip. This is a journey in Torah study that is of the first level, the highest level. how do we define a mitzvah and then go through the Torah with our definition in our pocket and come up with 613? And the Rambam is going to have his opinion, and the Bahag is going to have him, and Rasaj Gaon has his opinion, the Ramban is going to have his opinion. And what they're all trying to do is fit in to this, put a peg into the hole and come up with 613 based on a particular definition of what qualifies as a mitzvah. What constitutes a mitzvah?
I have a problem. My problem is that if it's the Oraisa, you think that's from Hashem. This is what's in the Torah, and that's the Oraisa. You have a set list. This is what's in the Torah. Everybody else is trying to fit their opinion.
I don't follow. Can you ask your question again for one more time? If I saw you, maybe it'd be easier.
If it's the Oraisa, it should be a list, a set list, not something that I think it's this way, you think it's the other way.
So wait a minute, you're asking a kasha on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why didn't God give us the list of 613? Is that your kasha?
No, your whole premise is that it's 613.
Not my premise, the Ramban's premise.
If the premise wasn't 613, I would have no problem saying I could have this one, I could have this one. You have a set number. You're trying to fit different opinions into a set number.
Well, let me put it this way.
You're backing into a number, but as opposed to saying this is a mitzvah. In other words, if you freely define a mitzvah from the Torah without worrying about how many are there, then you're in a very safe position because you're not going to miss anything.
Arthur, I finally agree with you.
When you try fitting it into the
it took a few months, but I finally agree with you. That's exactly what the Ramban is saying. That we have a free hand in defining a mitzvah. We are not bound. We are not, what's the word?
Confined.
No, when you put a straitjacket. We're not straitjacketed by 613. Maybe we have an amunah, we have a faith, it'll all work out at the end of the day. But
I mean, after all, Rav Simile only gave a sermon. There was only a sermon. The sermon anyone can make up a sermon.
Wait, Arthur, you said, well, don't backtrack. Do me a favor. Don't say things that you'll regret. It's not a sermon. Again, the Ramban is saying that this is halacha Moshe Sinai. That Moshe Rabbeinu at our Sinai heard the number 613. And he's saying that all of a Shas, we'll go through again all the Gemaras that we went through last week, if you like. And every single one of them supports the number 613. Let's go back to what you said before, which was very good. And here's where I agree with you 1,000%. As we go through this journey to try to define a mitzvah, and we go through every pasuk in the Torah, and we try to figure out and analyze, is it a mitzvah or is it not a mitzvah? We are free of the shackles. We are not straitjacketed by the number 613. And if I'm going to say that this mitzvah is not a mitzvah, it's a reshus, there's going to be another mitzvah to replace it. Where is that other mitzvah? I don't know where it is, but it's there. In other words, when I come up with my shita, with my very consistent definition of what a mitzvah is, I will demonstrate to you that based on my definition, we're going to arrive at the number 613. So the Rambam is going to have this list of 613 based on his definitions of the mitzvah. The Ramban will have his list of 613. It's a totally different list. And he's going to come up with new definitions of what constitutes and qualifies as a mitzvah. But he's going to come up with 613. And the Bahag is going to have his definition of what qualifies as a mitzvah. And he's going to come up with the number of 613. But at every step of the way, we are absolutely free of the shackles of 613. We are simply analyzing the particular mitzvah in a very honest, intellectual way. Does this qualify as a mitzvah? Does it not? The Rambam is going to say yes. Rabbi Shmuel is going to say no.
The reality is you don't care 613. If you're
saying we don't care about 613. We have a Masorah that there's 613. Now we're going to go ahead and analyze the Torah. Analyze every mitzvah, every mandate. Is it a mitzvah? Does it qualify? Does it not? And at the end of the day, We got to have tacha, we got a promise from heaven. It's going to arrive at the number 613. And every single shita is going to come up with a different counting based on his definition of what's a mitzvah. But the definition of a mitzvah is an intellectual endeavor that is exciting in and of itself, and it's not bound in any way by the number 613. To me, that's what Arthur was saying is very exciting.
Contradictory.
I wonder.
That's
what
a
they're
beautiful
saying.
esrog.
I wonder if if what they're
Two of
saying
them.
is,
Yeah, what?
if we didn't know the number in advance, and these Rishonim and the Gemara would read the Torah and say their list, but they didn't have a number in advance, if they wouldn't come out with the same number, 613, just like we said, you put 70 rabbis in a room in Egypt,
Yeah.
and they translated every way a nace. They all came out with the same Torah. I guess what they're saying is it would have been nice to know that we haven't, it's a secret number. No one actually knows it. And yet everyone comes out with the exact same number and even the same list. Because it's so clear. It's so clear.
The other problem is that if you have a list of
it's halacha
613,
mostly Sinai, so it's not a secret. Now you're asking, wouldn't it have been more exciting had it would have been more of a miracle of miracles, a nes nigla, if we didn't know about the number 613 and we all came up with different definitions, different lists, different enumerations,
Or
and
even the
it all
same
equals
definition. It should be
That's an
something
excellent
so
point, Bruce. I mean, again, it comes back to, I think Avi was asking before, why didn't God just simply give us the list of 613? And my answer to that question, again, I'm sure there are 1,000,001 answers to that question, but my personal, this is a very subjective answer, you can either take it or leave it, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give, the what's the word I'm looking for? Torah is aniyah b'makom echad v'ashira b'makom acher. What does that mean? Torah is an ongoing creative process. The Torah doesn't want to be straitjacketed. The Torah doesn't want us to read the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. No offense, I have family connections to the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. I gotta be careful with what I say.
So then why tell us 613 from the get-go? Why not leave it unknown? Why do we
also the big problem with 613 though is that if I have a list of 613 and I know something else is something I shouldn't do, if it's on your list and I do it, as I say, it's not on my list. I have a different list of 613. You're creating fractions.
Wait a minute, Arthur. That's absolutely true. For example, we had a machlokes, and let's go back again as to. Let me see if I can give one example here that would be a little bit more. Let's say the question of kini and stira. One shita is, I think it's Rabbi Akiva, says chova. And Rabbi Yishmael says rishos. I mean, this is a tremendous nafkamina here. We're not playing games over here. But again, getting back to the question that we were raising before, and that is, why didn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu just give us the list? I believe that this created a tremendous, what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, a search. People were searching for it.
Yeah, search. But what word am I looking for? If you could help me with my English here. When numbers get larger and larger, what's
infinity?
Exponential.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm looking for the word before exponential. There's a word before that. In any event, the Torah was meant to be an ongoing creative process. Again, they're going to be nafkaminas la'alocha. I'm not telling you that this is just, a matter of semantics and playing games with numbers like a bingo game and what number do you have on the thing. And no, these are tremendous nafkaminas. Every issue of how to define a mitzvah is going to have tremendous practical ramifications. But the Torah did not give it to us on a silver platter. We were not spoon-fed it. Now, again, this is a very heavy issue. We lost a lot of Torah over the course of the history of the Masorah. There's no question about it. And I can't deny that there were things that were much clearer 2,000 years ago than they are today. You know, we're in a state of, we're trying, even when you think about the Holocaust and the destruction of the Holocaust, you know, the first 2 months of our learning together, we were basing ourselves on Rebbe Chanan Wasserman, who was killed by the Nazis. I mean, if he would have been alive, think of how much Torah he would have given us when he gave us so much Torah in his short life. Or Rabbi Menachem Zemba, you know, at the time of the Varsha uprising. I mean, I can go on and on. We definitely lost Torah. I'm learning now Masechta Nedarim. Masechta Nedarim is mentioned in the Kinnis of Tisha B'Av because we lost the manuscript of Rashi. It was destroyed by the Crusaders. There's no doubt that we lost tremendous amounts of Masorah, that we're still struggling to backtrack and figure out the Torah. I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, I'm going to insist that the Torah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite wisdom it was given in a way that it's Torah Shabbal Peh. What does Torah Shabbal Peh means? It's not boxed in to a written text that has X number of letters on it, called 600,000, which it's not. But whatever the number of the letters are in the Torah, I forget the exact number, but that's not the way it was.
In theory, if I have a shita of defining mitzvah, but I can't reach 613, I could say I have 600 and 13 are out there someplace else that I don't know about. That's what you're basically saying, in a way.
Oh, and you brought up the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. The Kitzur is only 270. The Kitzur only covers 270 do's and don'ts of that. Because those are the mitzvot that are currently, according to the Kitzur, according to the Torah, which is what it's based on. That's all they have. That's all we can do.
That's all that's practical. They can be implemented. Yeah. How are we doing on the clock, Rabbi Osai? Okay, we have 15 more minutes. I want to make some more progress in the Ramban. Every word in this Ramban, for me, is like holy of holies, I'm telling you. I'm so excited about reading a Ramban. He says the following. V'im kol zeh, enom nimnoim mimachlekoseihem v'mitzvah min ha-mitzvahs. They are never inhibited in their decision about a particular mitzvah, whether it is min ha-mitzvahs, it's not min ha-mitzvahs, shezeh yom rishus, shezeh yom chova. They're arguing and debating back and forth. Is it a mitzvah? Is it not a mitzvah? Ki yodea ha'omer rishus sheyesh mitzvah maleis ha'cheshbon. The Gemara will never raise the question, hey, my friend, if you're counting this as a mitzvah, you're subtracting another one. If you're counting it as a rishus, are you going to add another one? Ulim nosa. The Gemara never even asked for a list. Give me your list. You just nixed out a mitzvah. You just nixed out 3 mitzvahs by calling each one of them a rishus. That's Rabbi Shmuel. Well, give me your list of 613. Why didn't the Gemara challenge him? And listen to the Ramban's answer to this question. He says, "V'nei omek ha'inyan v'richuko sheyivaru kol haTorah v'yimnu mitzvosecha." I'll give you a literal translation of the Ramban in my humble opinion, but I think it goes way, way beyond that. What he says literally, if you translate it, is that the reason why the Gemara never challenges so-and-so, Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Akiva, whoever it is, cough it up. Give me your list of 613. You're missing a mitzvah now. You're missing 3 mitzvahs. Says the Ramban, the Gemara never bothers asking that question, because of the depth of the subject matter. V'richuko. Richuko means it's distant. Distant means it's not accessible. Sheyivaru kol haTorah v'yimnu mitzvosecha. What I think the Ramban is saying is that if the Gemara would have taken this challenge, as we see the Rishonim took it on, and take the bull by its horn, and challenged every single one of the Tanoim who took a stand on a mitzvah or a group of mitzvahs, yeah, mitzvah, not mitzvah reshus, mitzvah chova, it would be the most profound learning. And richuko, it's beyond our access. It's not accessible. You know, Shas is pretty large as it is. If you do a daf a day, 2 sides of a page, it's going to take you 7.5 years. Could you imagine what it would take to analyze every single Amora, every single Tana, put his back against the wall, judge him in front of a court of Chachamim, and challenge him to come up with his understanding of what a mitzvah is and his enumeration of the 613. The Ramban is not denying that that would have been a valid Torah enterprise, but it would require such depth even to understand what the Rambam means by a mitzvah. How does the Rambam define a mitzvah? What are the 613 mitzvahs according to the Rambam? I'm just talking about one genius, the Rambam. I think we all agree he was a genius, an incredible genius. What he accomplished, I think he died, what was he, 63? I forget exactly what age he died. And he spent half his life running away from the Goyim. Just understand that one genius mind of the Rambam could be a lifelong endeavor. I'm showing you this book, but there's a lot more than this book. We learned, 3 pages worth of the Ramban out of hundreds of pages? Imagine if we would have had to have done that, and it would be intellectually, it would have been a valid Torah enterprise to challenge every single Tana, to juggle the mitzvahs and come up with 613, because Salach Lamosh Sinai, the Ramban is saying. And then the Ramban adds the word not only Omek HaInyan, the profundity of this learning, but Richuko. Richuko means it's hardly accessible. We would need every Tana and every Amora to stand in front of Ravina Rav Ashi, the editors of the Talmud, and lecture for endless hours about how they would come up with a system of defining a mitzvah, enumerating that, and coming up with 613. But again, the Ramban is not denying that this would have been a valid Torah enterprise. And if the Gemara didn't do it, then that's exactly what we're going to do here in the Sefer HaMitzvahs of the Ramban, in his critique of the Ram. Yeah, Bruce.
The Rambam explains how he comes up with the list. Did the other Rishonim do the same thing?
Yeah, yes. Well, I don't know the other Rishonim, but certainly the Ramban is going to do the same thing.
So they actually disagree on how the Rambam counts. It's not just the list. It's
No.
really...
The Rambam himself is going to... Most of this book is an answer given by the Rambam himself, to the question of what is a mitzvah. Most of this book. This is the Rambam, the great genius, the Rambam, is telling us what the Ramban describes as, what's his language here? Omek ha'inyan v'richuko. Exactly those 3 words. Omek ha'inyan v'richuko is what the Rambam decides, Maimonides decides to take on.
And the Ramban
Omek ha'inyan v'richuko.
Does the Ramban, for example, not have written something similar? How he comes up with his little list? Or?
What the Ramban is going to do is he's going to show you that the Rambam's definition of a mitzvah is not necessarily correct. For example, the Rambam defines a mitzvah as a mitzvah d'oraisa. And therefore, a mitzvah d'Rabbanan cannot be counted in Taryag because it doesn't live up and qualify to the definition of a mitzvah. And the Ramban is going to say that's wrong. The Ramban is going to say that even a mitzvah d'Rabbanan is going to qualify as a mitzvah. Do you follow?
Mm-hmm.
And all the
I'm just giving you one little example, one teeny example, but it goes on and on and on.
And it's clear that the Amoraim and Tanaim held by the 613. Maybe just it wasn't important to that.
I don't know. That's for you to judge. The Ramban vacillates back and forth. At one point, the Ramban in his presentation thinks, you know what, maybe this is just Rav Simlai's opinion. I'll grant you it's Rav Yeshua ben Levi's opinion, maybe throw in Rav Himnuna. And no one else bought into this whole 613. But then the Ramban reverses himself, as we discussed in great length, and he tries to indicate that everybody accepted 613. But again, Rabbosai, the number 613 now really takes a back seat in what the Ramban has just presented. I don't want you to miss that, the forest from the trees. The Ramban has just made a radical change here in our whole hashkafa, our whole attitude towards Sefer Mitzvahs, or towards the counting of mitzvahs. What's critical now is not the 613. When the Chachamim are going to debate whether X is a chiyuv or a reshus, it's a mitzvah, not a reshus, or not a mitzvah, they're not interested in 613. That's not what's uppermost on their mind. Free yourself of those shackles. Do an honest to goodness analysis of what you believe is a mitzvah and what you believe is not a mitzvah. Don't worry about Taryah. Again, I'm not denying, please don't write me off the charts over here. I'm not denying that the Ramban holds at the end of the day, after all this vacillation back and forth, that 613 is halachal emotion Sinai. He got it from Mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that after all the work and toil and analysis, what is a mitzvah, what qualifies a mitzvah, what constitutes, what doesn't, we're going to have to end up with an enumeration of 613. I'm not denying that. But on the other hand, I think what the Ramban is saying is that all that is tafel, that's all secondary. What's primary is how to define a mitzvah. And that is a subject of analysis for every single pasuk in the Torah. Every single time you think you see a mandate, you're not sure if it's a mandate. He has to do kinui on his wife. He doesn't do kinui on his wife. He's not allowed to free his eved. He's allowed to free his eved Kanani. All that are honest to goodness analytical issues that have to be understood within the framework of Torah Shebal Peh, of Chachmas HaTorah. And every Chacham has his right to use the talents, the abilities that God granted him to try to understand the Torah. We are involved in the most exciting, fundamental, and significant and challenging analysis that ever existed on the face of the earth. What is a mitzvah? And again, I emphasize over and over again, this is not a theoretical question. This is not just something up in the air. It has enormous applications and ramifications. And just to finish up for today, because I see that, I don't know if you have another shia now, and I know I don't feel so comfortable when the previous Maggid shia goes over time, so I don't want to be guilty of that. But he says the following: V'yimnu mitzvoseh kamo she'amru. Interesting. The Ramban says that I have a proof that there are certain questions that the Gemara doesn't raise, which would have been valid and would have initiated an entire Torah study, about which you could have written books upon books. And yet the Gemara is not going to raise that question. I'm going to give you something that's even easier that the Gemara could have challenged and gone through, and yet the Gemara doesn't do so. In Kiddushin Daf Lamed, the Gemara debates what's called chaseros and chaser mole, right? There's certain times the Torah adds a vav, it doesn't add a vav, and so forth and so on. And the question is, how many are there? How many chaseros are there? Different opinions in the Gemara. So the Gemara asks, V'nesei Sefer Torah v'nimneh. Why don't we just open up a Sefer Torah and count it? Today we could do it by computer. And the Gemara answers, Lo b'kiyah. We don't have the ability to do so. We don't have the knowledge. Maybe the Gemara is implying that certain Sifrei Torah might give you this impression and others this impression. We have a Kabbalah that this is the number of chaseros that there are in the Torah. We're not going to even go through the Torah from Bereshis to Li'enei Kol Yisrael, check the Sefer Torah, and decide how to calculate. Every time you see a chasa, put one of those lines, 4 and then a line across. And I'll just read one more line because I always like to end the shir with a cliffhanger. Is that how you say it? Cliffhanger?
Yeah, cliffhanger.
Keep in mind that the Ramban feels absolutely committed to defend the Baal Halachos, who came before the Rambam and came under tremendous attack by the Rambam, because the Bahag decided we're going to count mitzvahs to Rabbanon as mitzvahs. Again, as we emphasize over and over again in the Ramban, the word cheshbon, that there's a calculation of 613. Tafsu b'cheshbonos kol ha-mitzvahs. Please underline the word kol. Kol ha-mitzvahs hanogos b'Yisrael l'doros. Every mitzvah that is noeg l'doros, as opposed to a mitzvah l'shah, if the mitzvah is no heges l'doros, then it's part of the cheshbon of 613. And therefore, a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, since it's no heges l'doros, like Chanukah and like Purim and perhaps Netilas Yadayim and whatever else we'll come up with, that's included in the Taryah. It means that from the Bahag's perspective, the primary condition that has to be met in order to qualify as a mitzvah is no heges l'doros. Don't tell me, well, it's only d'Rabbanan. This is d'Oraisa, we'll count it. This is d'Rabbanan, we're going to leave it out. No. Says the Bahag, the number 613 that was given includes anything that's a mitzvah, that's obligatory, l'doros, for all generations. And this last line in the Ramban, which we'll have to study at great length next time, Mirz Hashem, gives a little bit of an opening as to how to understand the machlokas between the Ramban and the Rambam. Do we count mitzvahs to Rabbanon as mitzvahs? And the Ramban has now opened up our ears a little bit to or our eyes, I should say, getting a little bit of a glimpse of the view of the Bahag, the Baal Halachos Gedolos, that if it's a mitzvah no heges l'doros, it's counted. You can have a mitzvah that's in the Torah itself, but it's not no heges l'doros. It only applies in a certain period of time. Not going to be counted. You can have mitzvah that's the Rabbanon, that was inaugurated by the rabbinic, by the rabbis, but it's no heges l'doros, and it's upgraded to the status of a mitzvah. And how that works in Mirz Hashem, we'll be studying Bli Neder in the weeks to come to try to get a grasp on the Shita of the Bahag. Okay, then?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very exciting. That was the cliffhanger. Thank you very much.